Hello my schoolers, you're welcome to my school YouTube channel. My name is Emmanuel and in today's video we'll be tackling JAMB CBT past question in biology for the year 2006. Please don't go anywhere, stick around and we'll be right back. You're welcome back to my school YouTube channel. In today's video, we'll be tackling question 1 to question 25. Now, let's get down to question number 1. Night blindness results from a deficiency of vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin K, vitamin C. Vitamin E, deficiency of vitamin E will lead to what we call hemolytic anemia, okay? And then we talk about deficiency, okay, of vitamin E leads to anemia, okay? Vitamin A, yes, should be the deficiency of vitamin A should lead to light blindness because there are what we call production, there is production of pigments, okay, that we have in the body. And that pigment is what is responsible for the retina, okay, trying to regulate the retina so that the low light, when it is in the low light, when there's low light that is present, one can still be able to see very well, okay? So once one is deficient of that particular vitamin A, okay, the retina, those pigments will not be able to be produced, okay, for the retina to be able to regulate it. So it causes what? Night blindness, okay? For vitamin K is responsible for what we call protein, okay, that will be produced, okay, to help in the blood clotting, okay? If that is not there, so the deficiency of this will enhance the blood clotting not to be what? We will make the blood clotting not to be efficient, okay, in the body of organisms. So which means that for this, the deficiency of this will hinder or decrease the level of what? Blood clotting. And then vitamin C, of course, that's ascorbic acid. That has to do with, you know, scurvy, okay? Scurvy is what the deficiency of vitamin C will lead to. That you can have symptoms of headache, of fatigue, okay, of having bleeding in the gum, okay, in the mouth, okay. That's what the deficiency of vitamin C could be. So among all these options now, night blindness results from a deficiency of vitamin A. So the correct answer is option B. Question number 2. The product of excretion common to the mammalian kidney, lung and skin is what? We have mineral salt, we have carbon dioxide, we have water, we have, yes, mineral salt is excreted, okay, yes, in the lungs, in the skin, okay, through the sweat, okay. When one sweats, you can excrete out mineral salt, okay, but that is not common in the lungs, okay. Option B, we have carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, of course, we know that during you know, breathing in, exhalation and respiration, okay, the lungs is actually that, but carbon dioxide is not more in the kidney, because in the kidney we'll be talking of osmoregulation, okay, but this is not it. But we are talking about among all of this one now, which one is common as excretory product in kidney, in lung, skin? Option C says water. For water, yes, water should be the product of excretion that is common to kidney, lungs and skin. In kidney, okay, water is excreted in form of urine. It's passed out, okay, from the system. So water can also be excreted here in the lungs as a form of water vapor, yes, during exhalation. As you exhale, you excrete water vapor together with carbon dioxide, okay, in the lungs. And then in the skin, you can have water also released out as sweat together with mineral salts and some other things. So water is common as excretory product in kidney, in lung and skin. Then the other one is urea. Urea is more off in the kidney but not in the lungs and then in the skin. So which means that among this option now, the product of excretion that is common to the mammalian kidney, lung and skin is water. The correct answer is option C. Question number 3. An increase in air pressure in the lungs is due to what? Where the air pressure in the lungs, when it increases, it is as a result of what is responsible for that. Option A says increase in the volume of the thoracic cavity. Option B says upward movement of the ribs. Option C says relaxation of the diaphragm. And option D says contraction of the intercostal muscles. Usually, when the diaphragm, okay, and the intercostal muscles, when they relax, okay, what happens? The lungs will recoil. Once the lung recoils, it will now make the volume of the air that is present in the lungs to do what? To decrease. So once that happens, because don't forget we're talking about increase in air pressure. So once the volume of air in the lungs decreases, the lungs now begin to mount up pressure. The pressure that is present in the lungs now becomes more compared to the pressure that is present in the atmosphere. Okay, so in that case now, it will now increase the volume of the air that is present, the air pressure, okay, that is present in the lungs more than that. So what is responsible for that? It is not just in the increase of the volume of the thoracic cavity, no, because once the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles, once they relax, okay, not contract now, if there's a difference between contraction and relaxation, okay, relax, once they relax, what happens? The lungs will now what? Will now recoil. As it relaxes, it recoils, and once it recoils, what happens? We now discover that the air that is present, the volume of the air that is present in the lungs will now what? Will decrease. In that sense, the pressure that is mounted in the lungs now increases, is more compared to the one that is present in the what? In the environment, in the atmosphere of the body. So in that case is now, so what is responsible for that is as a result of the relaxation of the diaphragm. Okay, if we had had the relaxation of the intercostal muscles too, yes, that would also have been, but that's why we see the examiner had this as contraction. So you must know that there's difference between relaxation and contraction. Contraction, you know, and relaxation, one has to do with a shortening. Okay, when something is shortened, it becomes thickened. Okay, and in the other cases, when that one relaxes, it's not the same. So the relaxation of diaphragm is more likely. This would have also been correct if it would have been relaxation of the intercostal muscle, but the contraction of the intercostal muscle is not responsible for the increase in the air pressure. Rather, it is as a result of the relaxation of the diaphragm. So once the diaphragm relaxes, like I explained, the air pressure in the lungs, okay, increases more than the one that is present in the atmosphere. So as a result of that, the correct answer is option C, relaxation of the diaphragm. On to question number 4. One basic similarity between nervous and endocrine system is that both nervous system and endocrine system, okay, they both do what? Option A says produce widespread effects, transmit very fast impulses, okay, involve the use of chemical substances, and then we have produce precise and short-lived effects. Okay, one thing we know about nervous system and the endocrine system is that both of them play a crucial role, okay, when it comes to homeostasis. Don't forget, homeostasis has to do with regulation of the internal environment, okay, the system in the environment. We talk about the kidney, we talk about the lungs, we talk about the heart, the skin, okay, regulating the internal environment, okay, of the body of organisms. So both of them actually play important role. But one thing that is similar to both of them is that they make use of chemical substances. They communicate that, okay, in the body, though the timing might be different. One does it faster than the other one, but one thing that is common to both of them is that what they make use of what? Chemical substances. So which means that both of them actually involve the use of chemical substances, like option C. So the correct answer is option C. Question 5. The organ situated in the pericardial cavity of a mammal is the what? We have the heart, we have the liver, we have the stomach, we have the spleen. Now, when we talk about the pericardial cavity has to do with a sac, okay, that contains a small, amount of liquid or fluid, okay, present in, and it is surrounded by the heart. It is around the heart. Now, the pericardial cavity is a region around the thoracic cavity. When we talk about thoracic, it has to do with what? The chest, okay? The thoracic cavity, that is where we have the pericardial cavity, somewhere along in between the lungs, the lungs and the sternum, okay? That's where we have the pericardial cavity. So when we talk about the organ that is situated in the pericardial cavity, there's a hole. It is just the heart. So the heart is around there, a sac that is over it, that having fluid around it. Between the lungs and the sternum around the thoracic cavity. So the heart is actually the organ that is situated in the pericardial cavity of the mammal. So the correct answer is option A. Now let's proceed to question number 6. A unique characteristic of the cervical vertebrae is the presence of what? Cervical vertebrae. Don't forget, that is the vertebrae that is actually at the neck region. Okay, so the unique characteristics of that is the presence. And how many do we have? We have about 7 of that. Okay, around the spinal cord, just around the neck region where I'm pointing at. Now, what is unique about it is that it has what we call foramen. Okay, that foramen allows for the passage of the vertebral artery as well as the vein, okay, to pass through it. It is unique because other vertebrae, talk about the lumbar, the other ones, okay, the sacral, they don't have that. So it is unique only to the cervical vertebrae. Okay, so in the cervical vertebrae we have the foramen. So that foramen allows, it is just a small hole. You have it such that the vein and the artery can actually pass through it. Okay, so and that name foramen, of course, if you look at this place now, we don't have it. It has another name that it is being called, and which is what? The vertebral arterial canal. That is the other name it is called. The vertebraterial canal. That is the other name the foramen vertebra is formed. So it is not a large centrum because we have this. It is not unique. We have other vertebrae that have the large centrum. We have the long transverse process. Okay, we have it. Yes, in it. Okay, but it is through the transverse process that we have the vertebraterial canal. Okay, and then we have the sarcophysis, and then we have so among all of this one, what is unique? All other ones now are present in the other vertebrae, but the one that is unique to the cervical vertebra is formed at the neck region of the spinal cord. You can have it. We have about 7 of them in number. So the answer is foramen, but we don't have foramen here. So the other name is called the vertebraterial canal. So the correct answer is option D. Now let's move on to question number 7. In rabbits, the chamber of the heart that receives oxygenated blood from the lungs is the what? Generally in mammals we have the left atrium, or what we call the left auricle. Okay, the left auricle is found, the atrium is found around the auricle. So sometimes we use left atrium, we use left auricle. We are still saying the same thing. So that receives the oxygenated blood from the lungs is actually the left auricle or the left atrium. Now it now takes the blood, of course, from the pulmonary vein straight to the what? So in rabbits, generally in mammals, not just in rabbits, generally in mammals, oxygenated blood is carried by the left atrium, the left auricle. Okay, so it is similar. We have the rabbit, is also a mammal. So in the rabbit, the chamber of the heart that receives oxygenated blood from the lungs is the left auricle, not the left ventricle, not the right ventricle, not the right auricle. It is the what? The left auricle, or what we call the left atrium. If you don't have left auricle, you have left atrium, so you go for that. So the correct answer is option B. Question 8. The formation of water in the tissue respiration results from the what? How is water formed in the tissue during respiration? The tissue respiration. Okay. Option A says breakdown of water molecules. Of course, we are talking about formation of water in the tissue respiration. So it cannot be breakdown of water molecule. You want to form something, you don't need to break the thing down again. So it's option A, of course, is eliminated. Option B says reduction of oxygen by hydrogen. Yes, more likely. Option C says reduction of carbon dioxide. No, we are talking about tissue respiration. Now, usually in this type of respiration, there is what we call reduction of oxygen, okay, that takes place by hydrogen. Don't forget, in chemistry, we say that reduction is loss of oxygen and gain of hydrogen. Hydrogen is the one that is reducing the oxygen. Now, when hydrogen reduces oxygen, of course, if you write a chemical equation, you have H2 plus half O2 to give you water, H2O, water molecule, because that is how water is actually formed. So water is reduced in the cellular, especially in the cellular respiration. You don't forget that in cellular respiration we talk about the last stage, okay, the last stage of cellular respiration that has to do with oxidative phosphorylation, okay, where the food is broken down, okay, the 6 carbon atom is broken down into 3 carbon atom first in the first stage of respiration, cellular respiration, aerobic respiration. Then the final stage we have about 36, that's what we talk about the Krebs cycle, okay, we have about 36 ATP that is generated in that particular form. The first stage talks about 2 ATP, okay, energy that is given up in form of adenosine triphosphate. We call it ATP, okay, in the first stage. And then we have the last stage of the cellular respiration, where we have energy that is being given up, being produced in form of ATP, okay. So but what leads to the formation of the water in that phase? First is that what the oxygen is being reduced by hydrogen, okay, then water will be formed eventually. So based on that, we have combination of water molecules. No, that's not going to lead to formation of water. So the best answer, or the correct answer here, is reduction of oxygen by hydrogen. That will lead to the formation of water in the tissue respiration. So the correct answer is option B. Now let's move on to question number 9. Water is necessary for a germinating seed because it what? What does it do? What's the function of water, okay, in a germinating seed? Now, in a germinating seed, water is applied to carry out 3 functions. Number 1 is to rehydrate the seeds, okay. The seeds was hydrated before, but you bring water to make it wet, to make it moistened, okay. So you rehydrate the seed. That's one function. The second function is to activate the enzymes, okay, that is necessary for growth. And number 3 is to mobilize the food storage, anchorage, okay, that is responsible for anchorage there for the seed to be able to grow well. So out of the 3 functions we have now, we can look at the options. I said the first one to rehydrate the seed, the second one to activate the enzymes, and the third one to mobilize the food storage, okay, in the anchorage. Option A says promotes aerobic respiration. That is not the function of water. That's not why water is added to a germinating seed. Activate the enzymes, of course, that's one of the functions of water to a germinating seed. Option C says wets the soil for proper germination. Not just the soil, we are talking about what? The seed germinating. Yes, it has to wet the soil, but the main function why the water is necessary for this is to ensure that it is rehydrated, the enzymes necessary for growth is actually activated. Option D says protect the seed from desiccation. Protect the seed from desiccation. That is not it. So among this option now, water is necessary for germinating seed because it activates the enzyme. So the correct answer is option B. Do you know you can take practice questions on our simulated JAMB CBT past questions? All you need to do is to click on the link in the description below that takes you to the Myschool website. There you'll be able to download the Myschool mobile app for your Androids and the Myschool software for your laptops and computers. Please go ahead and start practicing. Now let's move on to question number 10. Which of the following produces both hormones and enzymes? Both hormones and enzymes. Yes, we understand that the hormones usually are what we refer to as the endocrine glands, and then the enzymes are what we refer to as the exocrine glands, okay. So among all of this, we have the ileum, we have the pancreas, we have the gallbladder, we have the kidney. If you're interested to know that the pancreas actually are responsible for the production of hormones and enzymes, I will explain why. Now, for the hormones usually, the pancreas produces hormones. We talk about the exocrine gland, and then the hormones that it produces here is usually the what we call the insulin and the glucagon, okay. Now the insulin tends to regulate, and the glucagon, both of them tends to regulate the amount of sugar level we have in the blood. When the sugar level is high, the insulin does what? It breaks down the sugar level, okay, in the blood. And then if the sugar level is too low, what happens? The glucagon will raise up the sugar level that we have in the blood. In that way, the insulin is responsible for the production of hormones, okay. That's the pancreas, is responsible for the production of the hormones, and that is the insulin and the glucagon. Then when we talk about the enzymes, the pancreas is also responsible for production of the enzymes. We talk about enzymes such as amylase, such as lipase, and then the trypsin. Now when we talk about amylase, usually we know that when we take in carbohydrates, the enzymes, the amylase, tends to do what? To break down the carbohydrate that is consumed into the body. Then we talk about we talk about amylase works on amylose, which is carbohydrate. Okay, we talk about lipase. Lipase is another enzyme that is produced by the pancreas. What does it do? It tends to break down the lipids, okay, the fats and oil that is consumed into the body. And then we talk about the last one, which is the trypsin. The trypsin, usually we want to break down the protein that is consumed into amino acids that is actually needed in the body of the organism. So we say that the pancreas actually is responsible for the production of both the exocrine and the endocrine glands that we have. So the hormones and the enzymes. So based on that, the ileum, we have that as part of the digestive system. Okay, we talk about the alimentary canal. Okay, where the small intestine, we have it here. Okay, the digestion of food and absorption of food takes place in the small intestine. We have the ileum. Ileum is part of the alimentary canal that is responsible for digestion of food. Okay, we talk about the gallbladder. Of course, you know what the gallbladder does. We have the bile, being formed, that is being stored, okay, formed at that particular place, where, of course, also involved in that. Then we are talking about the kidney, that talks about the osmoregulation of that. Of course, this one will help us in hormones, okay, hormones, but not for both enzymes and hormones. So the correct answer here is actually pancreas. Option B is the correct answer. I believe you are enjoying this content. If yes, please don't forget to click on the like button, hit the subscribe button, and finally tap on the notification bell to keep you informed once we upload our next video. Now let's move on to question number 11. The mammalian vein, which starts with and ends in a capillary network, is the what? The portal vein. That is the kind of vein that does that. If you look at the option we have pulmonary vein, we have mesenteric vein, we have renal vein, we have hepatic portal vein. I talked about portal vein, of course, that's the hepatic portal vein. Now, the hepatic portal vein is actually connected to one end of it is connected to the sinusoidal part of the liver, okay, and then we have the other end, okay, that is also connected to small intestine and the spleen. Okay, what it does is that it's connected to one part of the liver, and then the other part is connected to the small intestine as well as the spleen. Okay, we have it running through the gallbladder, the spleen, the small intestine, and then we have it transporting messages straight up to that part. So we have it at the sinusoidal part of the liver, and then the other part is connected, because the question says the mammalian vein, which starts with and ends in a capillary network. So it has a capillary network. It is starting with a capillary network, and then in between it has another one. So like I said, one end is the sinusoidal part of the liver, and then the other part is the small intestine and the spleen. So the correct answer here is option D, hepatic portal vein. We have the pulmonary vein, of course, connected from the heart. Okay, we have them, but they are not, the mesenteric vein, the renal vein are not starting and ending, okay, with the capillary network. Okay, it is only the hepatic portal vein that is responsible, or that is starting with a capillary network and also ending with a capillary network. So the correct answer is option D. Now let's move on to question number 12. In the transverse of a dicot stem, the region lying between the endodermis and the vascular bundle is the what? The area. I think we need a diagram to be able to show us, and then we can see clearly the part that is lying between the endodermis and then the vascular bundle. Let's look at the diagram of the stem of a dicot. Okay, so this is the stem, the transverse section of the stem, a dicot stem. Okay, we have the epidermal hair, we have the epidermis, okay, we have the hypodermis cortex, and then we have the endodermis, we have pericycle, and we have the vascular bundle, and then finally the pit. The pit is at the center of it. Okay, the question says the transverse, the side that is lying in between the endodermis, okay, and then the vascular bundle. This is the vascular bundle here. Okay, this is the endodermis, and then we have which one is lying in between? It is this one, which is what? Pericycle. Pericycle is the one that is lying in between the endodermis and vascular bundle. Let's move back to our options. So you can see now that the region that is lying between the endodermis, okay, and the vascular bundle, like we just saw in the diagram, is actually the pericycle. So the correct answer is option B. Now let's move on to question number 13. The two normal types of sex chromosomes are what? Usually we know we have two types of chromosomes. The sex chromosomes, we have the X chromosomes and the Y chromosomes, okay? The female genders usually have two X chromosomes, okay, for the sex, while the male counterpart has the X and Y chromosome, okay? So of course you know that it's the Y chromosome that is responsible for the male gender, okay? So option A, you can see that XXY and XYY, XX and XYY, no, XY, yes, and XXY, no, XX and XY. It has to be two of them. Then 2X, this is for female, and that is for male. So the correct answer is option D. Question 14. One advantage of variation in a species population is that individuals are, when we talk about a species population, we have a population where we have organisms that are more in number, okay? We are talking about the advantage of variation. When we talk about variation, we are talking about, you know, features that make them to adapt, okay? There are factors, maybe biotic factors or antibiotic factors. There are conditions that makes the habitation of those organisms in that particular population to be conducive for them. So when we have adverse effects, there are variations, okay? How do they adapt? So the advantage of variation in a species population is that individuals that live there, option A says, with favored traits become dominant. Of course not. It's not going to be, because we are talking about one advantage of variation. It should be with favored traits, okay, become dominant. What of those ones that don't have traits that are favored, okay? Will they still live there? It's not an advantage. Option B says easily reach, you know, their reproductive age. Yeah, easily reach their reproductive age. That is not a factor of the variation. Of course, we have species of the population. We are talking about one advantage, the advantage of having variation in that particular environment. Of course, yes, they will. It's not that this will not, of course, those that have favored traits will become dominant, okay? But we are looking at the major one, okay, for species production. When there is variation, there are adverse effects that are come into the environment. How are they able to adapt? Option C says are easily recognized by mates. Okay, no. Option D says are better adapted to changes. Yes, when there are changes, because we are talking about what the key word here is, what? Variation. When there is variation in the environment, in the population, how are they able to adapt to changes in the what? The factors that are. So they are better, is that the individuals are better adapted to what? To changes, because they must survive in that environment, whether there is limited supply of air, limited supply of food, of water, or space. Okay, how are they able to what? To adapt in that particular population? So the correct answer is option D. Question number 15. Mendel's second law of inheritance states that what? It looks at the different traits. It's saying that the genes, okay, that are responsible for different traits are actually done individually. They are segregated independently, okay? The traits, the genes that is responsible for different traits in an organism is actually done by segregating. They are segregated independently. They can do it independently on their own. The one does not have to what? To rely on or depend on the other one. That is what the Mendel's second law is all about, okay? Option A says alleles combine randomly, and alleles combine randomly. That will not be, if they combine randomly, then the law does not hold, because it has to do with what? How independent the alleles, okay, the genes that are responsible for the traits that are brought in an organism, are they able to do that independently, okay? But if they are combining, the alleles are combining, then that means the law does not hold. Option B says alleles segregates independently. Yes, alleles segregate. The alleles, the genes that are responsible for different traits in organisms, they do that independently. So they do that on their own. Segregate. They segregate independently. Option B is correct. Option C says alleles separate predictably. You can't predict it, okay? Because they do that independently. If you are able to predict it, then that means you can tell what happens. Then the second law of inheritance does not actually hold. Option D says chromosomes segregate independently. It's not the chromosomes, don't forget, it's the alleles, the genes. The genes are found in the chromosomes. Okay, so it is the gene, the alleles that segregate, that are responsible for that particular trait in the organism, that do that independently, not the chromosome. So the correct answer is option B. Question number 16. The intensity of competition among animals in a given area will increase with what? What increases the competition that we have? Remember, what will bring about competition in an environment among animals or plants will be that if there is limited supply, okay, of available resources. We talk about the food they eat. If we have limited supply, if the population or the total number of organisms or animals living in that environment at that particular period of time outnumbers, is more than the available food, is more than the water that's available, is more than the air, is more than the space that you have, then definitely there's going to be what? Competition. And that's what leads to what we call survival of the fittest by Charles Darwin. Okay, so the intensity of competition will definitely increase if what? Option A says an increase in the frequency of disease outbreak. If there's increase in the frequency of disease outbreak, most of them will begin to die off. And once they die off, what happens? There will be no what? The competition will be less, because many die and we still have much food. Okay, we still have more space. So that is not actually going to get increase. Option B says an increase in population size. Yes, an increase. If the total number, they begin to give birth, the animals give birth to young ones, and then the number increases in that particular environment population, you discover that the competition will become intensified, will be greater, will be higher compared to when we have less numbers. So an increase in population size will increase the intensity of competition. Option B is correct. Option C says a decrease in immigration rates. If the number of people that are animals that are moving in decreases, then definitely you have less people coming in. Those that are there are still there, the animals are still there. So the intensity of competition will be less, will not be more, but we are talking about increase. Option D says an increase in the emigration rate. That's the emigration rate, is the rate at which animals move away, move out, okay, from the environment to other places. So if they move out, if we have more of them increasing, moving out, we have lesser number of animals in that community or in the population, and then it would be easier for them to what? To be able to feed well, manage the resources, space well, and they have in abundance. So that is not going to intensify the competition, but one that intensifies the competition among animals here in a given area will be an increase in population size. So as a result of that, the correct answer is option B. Now let's move on to question number 17. The part of the mammalian skin involved in temperature regulation is the what? The part of the mammalian skin, okay, involved in temperature. You know that there's also the part of the brain, okay, that regulates temperature, okay, but this is talking about what? The part of the mammalian skin, okay, that actually is involved in temperature regulation is what? We have the sweat gland is part of it, okay, we also have the air, okay, is part of it, but in this case now, we have the air papilla, we have the air follicle, not the air pass. These are parts of the, but it is not part, so we cannot go for this. But the major one now, of course, like I said, is the sweat gland. The sweat gland is the part of the mammalian skin that is responsible for regulating the temperature of the skin. Oh, if it is cold, how does your skin, how does your body, how does it regulate, how does it respond to it, to the stimuli? If it is hot, how do you respond? The skin, how does it respond to it? It actually what the sweat gland is, what is responsible for the regulation of the hotness or the coldness of the body in the particular environment. So the correct answer is option A, sweat gland. On to question number 18. The role of the Golgi complex in an eukaryotic cell is to what? When we talk about Golgi complex, we are sometimes, some textbook or some persons refer to it as Golgi apparatus, okay, Golgi bodies. We are still saying the same thing. So the Golgi apparatus or Golgi complex in an eukaryotic cell, of course, it is a complex organelle of the cell that is present in eukaryotic cell, okay? And when we talk about eukaryotic cells, we are talking about, cells that are found usually in fungi, that are found in protists, okay, in protista, that are found in animals, and then that are found in plants. Of course, the other part, the monera, so the organisms in the monera kingdom, that's the monerans, actually do not possess this. So what they possess is the prokaryotic cell. Okay, now what is the role of the Golgi apparatus? One of the functions of that is, we have option A, say conduct ions in and out of the cells. We're conducting ions is the function of the ion channels, okay, not the Golgi complex. The Golgi complex is not going to regulate, or it's not going to conduct the ions, okay, in and out of the cells. It is the ion channels that does that. Option B says transport genetic materials out of the cell. Well, transportation of genetic materials out of the cell, maybe to the lysosome, okay, is not the role of the Golgi complex. Okay, option C says provide attachment for ribosomal granules. Providing attachment for ribosomal granules, that is the major function of the endoplasmic reticulum, okay, not the Golgi apparatus. Option D says transport organic materials in and out of the cells. Yes, that is a major, or one of the functions, okay, not the major, okay, one of the functions of the Golgi apparatus, or the Golgi body, or Golgi complex in eukaryotic cell, is to ensure that organic matters or materials are transported inside or outside and outside of the cell. So the correct answer here is option D. Question number 19. The dominant phase in the life cycle of a bryophyte is the what? Don't forget that the bryophytes usually have what we call example as mosses and liverworts. Those are examples of bryophytes. Yes, even though they have differentiated bodies, okay, they do not, of course, they are not vascular bundles. They don't have vascular bundles present in them. So because of that, we are talking about the dominant phase. Now the phase, when we talk about dominant phase, we are talking about the phase in which they spend most of their life, okay. Now the bryophytes have this sporophytes, okay. They can exist as sporophytes and they can exist as gametophytes, okay. But between these two now, the one that is a dominant, that they spend more time, more of their life cycle, more of their years, okay, lifespan is spent more in as what? As gametophytes, okay, not as sporophytes. Less of the life is spent as sporophytes. So it is not the prothallus, it's not the gametogyre, it is what? The gametophyte. So the dominant phase in the life cycle of a bryophyte is the gametophyte. Of course, you see that happening in mosses, you see that happening in the liverworts, okay. They have that as gametophytes, okay, they exist as that. So the correct answer is option C. Do you have any question bothering your mind on all we have done so far? Please feel free to ask your questions. All you need to do is to click on the link in the description below that takes you to the Myschool website. There you'll be able to ask your questions and answers will be given in the shortest period of time. Now let's move on to question number 20. The evidence that supports the advancement of ferns over mosses is derived from what? Don't forget that when we talk about level of advancement, okay, the ferns, okay, actually, which are pteridophytes, okay, are more advanced than the mosses. The mosses are the bryophytes, okay. We have in the level of advancement, we have the thallophytes comes first, okay, the thallophytes, say, then followed by the bryophytes, then followed by the pteridophytes, then followed by the gymnosperm, and then we talk about the angiosperm. The angiosperm are the what? The most advanced when we talk about the plant kingdom, okay, in terms about their advancement, okay, in their complexity, okay. So the first, so like we said earlier on, this one, the ferns are examples of the pteridophytes, okay. They are more advanced than mosses. So what is the evidence that supports that? Now we are comparing two organisms now, looking at their similarities and their what and their differences, and the evidence that actually supports the functions. We are looking at the structures, okay, because we are talking about the advancements, okay. So we are looking at the structure of the fern and then the structure of the mosses. We know that the pteridophytes usually, especially like the ferns, they have differentiated bodies, they have roots, okay. And then for this one, the mosses, yes, even though they have differentiated body, that's the leaf separated from the roots, these ones, they have what we call the vascular bundles. When we talk about vascular bundles, we talk about the xylem, we have the phloem. It's present here in pteridophytes, in the ferns. But for the mosses usually, They do not have vascular bundles, okay? They are non-vascular bundles, okay? So that is a difference. So we are comparing the two of them, okay? And then we are looking at the structure of them, of defense, and then the structure of the mosses, looking at the similarities and the differences between them. And what is responsible, the evidence that supports that is what we refer to as the what? Comparative anatomy. We are comparing the similarities together. Comparative anatomy. Option B says molecular records. Molecular records has to do with genetic informations, okay? That genetic information that will help the organism, okay, to help us in evolutionary, records. So that is what molecular records is. Then when we talk about biochemical similarities, we are looking at the chemical, substance nature of the organisms that are actually present there. That's about the chemical comparison, okay? That is what the biochemical similarity. And when we talk about the physiological records has to do with the functions, okay? The functions of the organisms that are there. How are we able to get a record about the functions of the different parts? So that's the difference between anatomy and physiology. Physiology has to do with the function of the part. So when we talk about the anatomy of the body, okay, we are talking about the structure of the body, of the parts of the body. That's anatomy. But when we talk about physiology, we are talking about what? The function of those parts of the body. So you must get the differences between them. So the evidence that supports the advancement of ferns over mosses is derived from comparative anatomy. So the correct answer is option A. Do you have better explanations or better steps to go about this question that be solved? Please feel free to share with us. All you need to do is to go to the comment section. There you will indicate the question number and the solution you wish to share. Now let's move on to question number 21. Which of the following vertebrates has the most simple structured heart? Simple, the most simple. Now, if you look at the reptiles, usually the reptiles have 3-chambered hearts. Okay, when we talk about the reptiles, of course, the organisms that live on land, they crawl with their stomach, they have scales on their body. The difference between them, like the lizards, we have them. So their heart is structured to have a 3-chambered heart. Okay, that is what the reptiles are. The fishes, yes, the fishes have a very simple structured heart. They have about 2 chambers. They have about 2-chambered hearts. Yes, structure here. This has 3-chambered heart. These are 2-chambered heart. The mammals, like the humans, we have the 4-chambered heart, okay? And then we have the amphibians also having 3-chambered hearts. They live in water and they also live on land. So among these ones now, this one has 3, this has 2, this one has 4, this one has 3. So this one has 2. So this one has the least. It has the simple structured heart. So it has just 2. It has one atrium or auricle, and then it has one ventricle. So just 2 of them, single for 2 of them, because they don't need, of course, how they carry out their metabolic activities, okay, respiration. So they have just that. So we have them. The fishes usually are the one that are the most simple structured heart, because they have 2 structured heart, one atrium and one ventricle. So the correct answer is option B. To question number 22. One primitive feature of the coelentrates, this is called coelentrates, okay, is the possession of what? Yeah, the coelentrates are also known as cnidarians. When we say cnidarians is spelled C-N-I-D-E-R-A. So cnidarians. So cnidarians or coelentrates usually they have primitive features. Okay, we want to look at one of them. One of the primitive features of the coelentrates or cnidaria is the possession of what? First, we must know examples of the coelentrates. The cnidarians, we have the jellyfish is an example of coelentrate. We have the corals, those are examples of the coelentrates. We have the sea anemones, okay? Those are examples of coelentrates. One primitive feature of those coelentrates are, option A says a dorsal mouth. No, that is not a primitive feature that they have. Of course, they don't have a dorsal mouth like the fishes. We have, option B says radial symmetry. Yes, they have a radial symmetry, just like the spoke, okay, of the wheel. Okay, the spoke of the wheel. You see the way the wheel, okay, of a car is, or of a bicycle. Okay, we have those spokes around them. Like, so they all have a common center, okay, where they can be what? They can be split. So that is what we call a radial symmetry. Anytime you hear of radial symmetry, just always remember the bicycle, the wheel of a bicycle, and then you have those spokes around them connected to the center like that. That is how the radial symmetry actually looks like, okay, because they have, you know, a primitive body structure, okay, so it helps them, it enables them to have that the radial symmetry helps them to thrive, okay, in that part. We talk about bilateral symmetry. Bilateral symmetry are for more advanced organisms, okay, like human beings, okay. You can be able to split up, you know, the organism into right and then into left, okay. So humans have bilateral symmetry. We have the right and the left part. The coelentrates do not possess that, rather they possess a radial symmetry, and then we talk of a false foot. A false foot, we talk about that in amoeba, for instance, okay. We call it, that's why we call it a pseudomonia. Pseudomonia, okay, it's a false foot. They don't have a true foot, but yet they still move from one place to the another, maybe by engulfing around, and then they protrude in, and then they move in swimming where they are in the water. So the primitive feature of the coelentrates is the possession of the radial symmetry. So the correct answer is option B. Now let's move on to question 23. A characteristic that best exemplifies the evolutionary advancement of mammals over other vertebrates is the what? We are talking about what sets out, what stands out, okay, among, when we talk about evolutionary advancement of mammals from every other vertebrate. Don't forget that vertebrates are usually animals, okay, that have what? That have backbone, okay, though they have other things in character. So vertebrates, all animals that have bones, backbones, are what we refer to as vertebrates. So whether they are apes, whether they are pisces, whether they are amphibians, whether they are reptiles, or whether they are mammals, they are all examples of vertebrates. Those are the classes we have under vertebrates. So we are looking at the advancement of mammals over every other vertebrate. That's the pisces, that's the fishes, the apes, that's the birds, the amphibians, okay, animals that live on both water and land, and then we talk about the reptiles, okay. What is the advantage that the mammals have over them? Option A says viviparous mode of reproduction. Yes, when we talk about viviparous mode of reproduction, we are talking about the mode of reproduction where animals, okay, give birth to their young ones, to live birth, okay. They give birth to their young ones alive, okay. The other one is what we call the oviparous. Oviparous has to do with the birds, okay, or animals that actually lay eggs, okay. Those are oviparous. And then we have the ovoviviparous, okay. That has to do with animals that bear the egg and get it fertilized inside of them, okay, before they actually give birth. So viviparous mode of reproduction is one characteristic of reproduction that actually stands out the mammals from them. Yes, you can say we have some from some vertebrates that actually do what? That actually still, you know, undergo viviparous mode of, so that they give birth to their young ones alive, and yet they are not mammals. Yes, we have that, but we have few of them. Then again, you want to look at the kind of parental care that mammals give to their young ones. They give the care for them, they provide the provision of food, they take care of them, and ensuring that their well-being, okay. Mammals, because of their level of reasoning, they tend to care more, parental care for their young ones, which is still under the viviparous when you compare to those other ones that you want to mention, okay. Look at option B, says possession of paired lips. This one is common, not just the vertebrates, we have not just the mammals, okay. Of course, we have the reptiles, we have the birds, okay, also having paired limbs. We have the amphibians, you know, we have some of them, we have the reptiles, some of them having it. So this is not unique to them. We have terrestrial mode of life. Yes, terrestrial organisms that live on land, we have many of them, okay. Not only mammals can live on land, we have many organisms, even whether the reptiles, whether they are amphibians, whether they are birds, okay, that's the apes, okay, we have them living also on land. So this also is not an evolutionary advancement. It's not a characteristic that exemplifies, that stands out. Option D says possession of a heart. Of course, all vertebrates have hearts, whether they are fishes, like we saw in the other question, having two-chambered hearts, okay, whether they are reptiles having 3-chambered, whether they are, amphibians having 3-chambered hearts, okay, they all have hearts. So whether it is simple or whether it is advanced, it's complex, okay. So but among these options now, the one that stands out, okay, as a characteristic that best, okay, which means all of them actually are present in them, but the one that best, underline the word best, okay, is actually the viviparous mode of reproduction. Viviparous mode of reproduction. So option A happens to be the best answer. Now let's move on to question 24. An organism which exhibits extracellular digestion is what? When we talk about extracellular digestion, the organism don't ingest the food in, okay? What it does rather is to, secrete the enzyme, okay, on the food, okay, by then taking it in. So we have the spirogyra. The spirogyra, of course, we know undergoes what we call the intracellular digestion, okay? Digest the food inside of it. Don't forget that the spirogyra actually has what it takes. We have the food vacuole, inside of it that is formed, the contractile vacuole where it takes out the waste, okay, and then we have other parts. The nucleus is there. We have other. So the spirogyra is able to exhibit intracellular digestion, not extracellular. And then when we talk about option B, that is paramecium. Paramecium, of course, it has gullets, okay, the esophagus, it has it there from the cilia that is protruded in. So it takes in food inside and then it can be able to digest the food inside of it. So it undergoes intracellular, not extracellular. Option C says amoeba. Amoeba, yeah, though we know that what they do is, what amoeba does is to, seize food, it senses the food, then with its pseudomonia, it moves towards the food and then it engulfs around the food, okay? As it engulfs around the food, it begins to digest it gradually into the body, diffuses it, and then it releases enzymes that diffuses. Then option D says rhizopus. Rhizopus is a fungi. You can say it's a fungus, singular fungus, but fungi plural, okay? Rhizopus being a fungus actually is a saprophyte. So what it does is it feeds on saprophytes, okay, on dead decaying organisms. So instead of ingesting the food in, what it does is as it goes on that particular food, what it does, it will now release, okay, it will release the enzyme, like we talk about the amylase, okay, we talk about the cellulase, because most often you see it going up on carbohydrates. You have them on bread, okay, you can have the rhizopus like the bread. So it will now break down. By the time it releases the enzyme, that's the amylase or the cellulase, on the food, on the bread for instance, it will now break down that food now into simpler units, okay? Of course, don't forget that amylase is the enzyme that breaks down carbohydrates, okay, into glucose, and we have the cellulase also, so that does that. So once it does that, then it will be able to take it. So that is done outside of the cell. It is not inside. So that's why it is not intra. It is what? Extracellular. So among this now, rhizopus is the organism that exhibits extracellular digestion. So the correct answer is option D. Now let's move on to question number 25. The causative agent of typhoid fever is what? When you have typhoid fever, you say you go to the lab, then you carry out a viral test, okay, to check for the presence of typhoid fever. So the causative agent of typhoid fever is what? Option A says salmonella. Okay, we have different forms of salmonella. We have the salmonella typhi, we have the salmonella paratyphi. Okay, they are bacteria actually, okay, that causes typhoid. You call it typhoid fever. Okay, of course you begin to feel some symptoms that could be responsible for the typhoid fever. Okay, so the salmonella typhi or salmonella paratyphi is actually the bacteria that is responsible for typhoid fever. Option B says entamoeba. Entamoeba, we call that, the full name is entamoeba histolytica. Now entamoeba histolytica, what it does is to cause dysentery. Okay, usually it is contacted when someone is exposed, maybe you touch feces or excreta or contaminated food, okay, by that microorganism. So entamoeba histolytica actually causes what we call dysentery, okay, not the typhoid fever. Option C says Escherichia. Escherichia for short, we call it E. coli. E. coli is Escherichia coli, okay. E. coli is responsible for diarrhea, okay, diarrhea that you can have it present, but definitely not the typhoid fever. The same thing with Shigella. Shigella is a type of organism or microorganism that causes shigellosis. Of course, shigellosis is a type of diarrhea too that is caused by the organism. So among all of these options now, Salmonella typhi, or we have Salmonella, is the same thing. For short, is Salmonella is the causative agent of typhoid fever. So the correct answer is option A. I believe you enjoyed this content. If yes, please don't forget to click on the like button, hit the subscribe button, and finally tap on the notification bell to keep you informed once we upload our next video.